distinguished representative of Georgia. And now I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Poland.
Mr. President, Mr. Secretary General, distinguished delegates, Poland fully supports the resolution just tabled by Ukraine and calls on each member state to stand firmly behind it. We deeply believe that through this act, we will demonstrate our adherence to the principles enshrined in the UN Charter. Only by upholding those fundamental principles, we can see the truly peaceful and long-term solution to the conflict caused by the Russian aggression in Ukraine. In that sense, the resolution we are about to vote paves the way to a meaningful diplomatic effort to end the atrocities of this war. To achieve peace, Poland, as a current chairmanship in office of the Organization of Security and Cooperation in Europe, called yesterday for the immediate ceasefire in Ukraine to let humanitarian organizations deliver assistance. But these appeals for peace are even more urgent when you look at the events in Ukraine from a close distance perspective. Let me tell you how we, Poles, see and respond to the horrors of this war as neighbors and friends of Ukraine. There is no doubt that we are confronted with one of the biggest humanitarian crises in Europe since World War II. In the first 3 days of Russian aggression, facilitated by the complicity of the Belarusian regime of Alexander Lukashenko, we witnessed more than 500,000 people fleeing Ukraine, 300,000 of which found refuge in my home country. We keep our borders open. Our diplomatic missions help those who seek refuge in Poland. The nationals of all countries who suffered from Russian aggression or whose life is at risk can seek shelter in my country. And I can tell you, only for the first half of today, we welcome people of 125 nationalities fleeing Ukraine to Poland. So that means it concerns us all. The list of these nationalities are too long to read to you, so I just read the first, those with more than 100 nationals fleeing to Poland only today in the morning. Ukraine, Uzbekistan, Nigeria, India, Morocco, Kazakhstan, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Poland, Belarus, Iran, Turkey, Algeria, and Russia. This refuge applies also to the students, which I understand is a serious concern of some colleagues here in the chamber. The students are also welcome to Poland, and they are offered to continue their studies in Poland. We know that some of the missions here in New York were targeted by the disinformation suggesting discriminatory practices at the Polish-Ukrainian border based on race and religion. I can tell you this is a complete lie and a terrible insult to us. Besides giving refuge, Poland delivers to those who suffer a very practical and tangible help. My government organized special trains for the elderly and mothers with small babies, as well as convoys with supplies and medical aid. There are 7,000 beds in 20 hospitals ready for those wounded and sick, and I want to announce that the first Ukrainian refugee babies were born in Poland in the last 24 hours, and the first life-saving operations were carried out for the elderly in our hospitals. Poland stands ready to cooperate closely with UN OCHA, International Committee of the Red Cross, and other humanitarian organizations to ease the burden of the civilians targeted by the Russian aggression. But what I am most proud of is the outpour of spontaneous readiness to help by individuals. Polish families are opening their homes to refugees. They offer clothes, food and accommodation. Thousands of private cars are coming from all over Poland to pick up those who cross the border. On the first 2 days, we experienced long traffic jams because of the number of cars coming from all the corners of Poland. Polish people stand in lines for hours to donate blood for Ukraine. The scale of help was offered was so big that the government opened a special website, Helping Ukraine, where volunteers can register and get guidance on those in need. While diplomats in my mission are fulfilling our diplomatic duties here in New York, our family members and friends are welcoming refugees coming directly from the war zone. In this conflict, Poland may not be a geopolitical superpower, but we want to be a solidarity superpower. And this is how we want to change the grim reality for better. At the same time, I would like to pay a tribute to those Ukrainians who defend their motherland and continue to stand for their country's freedom. Those are not only soldiers, but also people like Vasilina, a 30-year-old mother of two small daughters, living in a village near the Polish-Ukrainian border. When offered a trip to Poland by my family, she answered, "I cannot leave Ukraine now. This is my country. I have to stay and take care of it." And now she is cooking food for soldiers and refugees at the border. A similar answer was given by our diplomats in Ukraine. We keep our embassies and consulates open, and they keep fulfilling their diplomatic and consular duties. Let me share, you colleagues, the message to you I received today in the morning from our ambassador, Bartosz Cichocki, in Kyiv. I quote, "I am the Polish ambassador to Ukraine. I work in Kyiv, a city the size of Berlin, inhabited by over 4 million people. From Thursday morning, I have to hide from the bombing in my basement several times a day. I wake to exchanges of machine gun fire. Windows are shaking from the missile detonations. I am convinced that right now, when you are deciding in New York, hundreds of thousands of terrified residents of Kharkiv, Dnipro, Zhytomyr, Mariupol, Lviv and Kiev look at you with hope and faith in the power of international law." End of quote. And I wish to conclude by a reference to the warning expressed by a 19th century Russian novelist, Fyodor Dostoevsky, in his book with a meaningful title, Crime and Punishment. The message of the book is following. When someone, just like Raskolnikov, thinks he is exceptional and free from moral obligations, and therefore feels entitled to committing a crime of murder, in the end, he faces the punishment from the crime itself, because committing a crime is already one's biggest punishment. There is no crime without the punishment. Thank you very much.
I thank the distinguished representative of Poland. And now I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Austria.
Thank you, Mr. President. And as usual, Austria aligns itself with the statement by the European Union. However, we also want to add our voice in our national capacity, because what is currently being deliberately inflicted upon Ukraine does not allow us to remain silent. Excellencies, colleagues, fellow Ukrainians, let me start by thanking you, Mr. Secretary General, for your clear words this morning and these past days. We are grateful to see that the United Nations is there to help those suffering and in dire need for help. We meet here today to discuss the Russian aggression against Ukraine, to discuss the violation of Article 2.4 of our UN Charter. That we meet here today in this room is a good thing and a bad thing. It's bad because it means, after several days since Russia launched its aggression against the sovereign territory of Ukraine, we are still witnessing military attacks, terrible human suffering, and loss of life. It's also bad because questions of peace and security should be addressed by the Security Council. As primary responsible for upholding international peace and security, the Security Council cannot remain silent when basic principles of our international rules-based order are trampled by military boots and squashed by tanks. Last Friday, however, the Security Council decision was blocked by the veto of a permanent member, the Russian Federation, even though 81 members of the international community supported the draft resolution of the co-pen holders. Yes, the veto power is foreseen in the UN Charter, but so is the obligation to uphold UN principles. If in the 21st century the Security Council is blocked in a situation that constitutes a blatant breach of international law, we should ask ourselves if this system of veto powers is still able to regulate our international relations. Yet, colleagues, our meeting here today is also good. It's good that the General Assembly is there to step in if the Security Council cannot fulfill its mandate. And it's good that we now have the opportunity here in this General Assembly Hall to raise our voices, to recall the principles of the UN Charter, our Charter, and to state clearly that we will not stay silent if the Charter is violated in the most serious way. This is our right. This is our obligation as members of the organization. Colleagues, at the end of this debate, we will vote on a resolution condemning the aggression of Russia against Ukraine and showing solidarity with the people of Ukraine. Austria will vote yes on the resolution and urges all of you to do so also. By voting yes, we show the world that the UN is able to take its responsibility to defend the rule of law, international law, and the UN Charter. By voting yes, we show that these acts and similar horrifying acts are not tolerated by the international community. And most importantly, by voting yes, we show the Ukrainian people that they are not alone. I know that for many of us, such votes can be difficult. Some say this is a regional issue, a European problem. Colleagues, an attack against one of our members, one of members of this organization, is an attack on us all. In our interconnected world, our world is one region. Cyber weapons strike everywhere. Missiles have global reach. The world is not only regional, it has become local. Some say we must respect security concerns. Yes, colleagues, we must. Everyone has security concerns. Ukraine had them and gave up nuclear weapons and trusted that others would not harm them. But clearly, if you have security concerns, solve them with dialogue, not tanks. If a country with one of the largest armies